I want to talk to you today about overcoming isolation and not just necessarily isolation in the way we would think of that after leaving a toxic relationship. Obviously, when you leave a long term marriage or when you leave a relationship initially, you are going to be faced with a lot of searing, uncomfortable feelings of perhaps isolating yourself, feeling empty, feeling grief over the loss of that relationship. But I want to talk about a different, more insidious type of isolation that happens long after we leave. And this type of isolation happens when we go from a chaotic relationship where there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of wishful thinking and hoping that things get better and numbing ourselves to the reality and dulling our intuition by ignoring red flags. This type of isolation happens months or years after leaving, and it often happens when women transfer the same type of anxiety, uncertainty. Their nervous system is kind of stuck in a perpetual state of fight or flight. When they just transfer that behavior to other parts of their lives. One of the biggest ways that I see a woman remaining stuck long after she's left a relationship, and when I say remaining stuck, she's doing all of the right things. She's in therapy. She's had EMDR. She's working in a really lovely career. She's established in her career. She's accomplished a lot. She has a beautiful home. She's financially stable, financially secure, a lot more so than what she was in the marriage or the relationship. But there is this chronic busyness that takes over in her life. She might find that she is essentially a workaholic, whereas the relationship she was with her ex took up a lot of emotional space, mental space, a lot of space in her life to the point where she lost herself. She's now often finding herself in that same feeling, but just with her career or with her kids or just with life in general. I'll give you an example. I had somebody who had been out of her marriage for 4 years when we started working together and had been to therapy, had gotten over the initial crunchiness and like searing emotional pain of the divorce and realizing that she was married to a narcissistic type and went on to generate incredible success for herself, owned a business, was making more money than she'd ever made before. And she was miserable because the same patterns that led her to a toxic relationship were now leading her to a toxic relationship with her career and remaining chronically busy. So what happens when you are in a toxic relationship is that your body gets conditioned to react, to anticipate what could go wrong, to never feel like you're doing good enough, to feel like you're always kind of chasing the next thing. And this leaves you with a feeling of never fully feeling safe or being able to relax or to trust that the relationship is going to work out. You're always in a state of hypervigilance. And when we leave these types of relationships, what happens is that our body gets used to living in a state of hypervigilance to the point that if we're not living in a state of hypervigilance, we think something's wrong. Do you see how twisted that becomes? And so what happens is most women will continue living in a state of hypervigilance, but since they don't have a partner who's a roller coaster to focus on anymore, they will focus their attention on their career. They'll often get into another inconsistent relationship after leaving their partner. They might entertain friendships that drain them. They find themselves in careers that drain them. They find themselves working with clients that don't align for them, and they feel like they're constantly compromising themselves and staying busy. Like they always have the next thing to do. They wake up with anxiety. This is because your body is stuck in this state of fight or flight. And the long-term consequences of this is that first of all, it often creates autoimmune issues or physical health breakdown. You might find that you get sick more frequently. You might find that all of a sudden you develop IBS, whereas before you didn't have any of those issues. You might be perimenopausal or menopausal, and your symptoms are extremely they interrupt your life. Like you feel like you can't focus. Stress will do that. Living in a state of fight or flight will do that. But the biggest implication long term is that you don't know how to trust yourself. Your brain and your body are designed to go into fight or flight when we're presented with danger, or when we're presented with a relationship or a situation in life that doesn't sit well with us. And so our alarm system starts going off to warn us about danger so that we can make a different choice. Well, what happens is that if you've ignored or your alarm system was going off for 25 years with your ex, but you ignored that, or you rationalized that and told yourself it wasn't that bad. What happens is it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf, right? The boy who cried wolf, I think it was like a fairy tale or a fable or something. Like, he would consistently cry wolf, and over time, people stopped believing him until one day there was really a wolf, and then it was too late. So this is what happens when you ignore your intuition, is that your body and your brain no longer, like, it's like the hypervigilance fight or flight alarm system has been going off for so long that it's worn out. It's like you are driving a car. I like to use this analogy. Your brakes, right? You have brake pads, and your brake pads are responsible for your brakes operating and functioning properly so that you don't crash into the person in front of you. And your brake pads start wearing out when you press on the brake and you hear squealing or squeaking sounds. And then eventually your brake pads just wear all the way down and they don't work at all. This is similar to your fight or flight system and your inner alarm system. When it's been going off for decades, but you're not taking any action to create safety for yourself, and instead you're choosing to remain in unsafe relationships or an unsafe career where you're not setting boundaries, and we don't set boundaries, or we stay in unsafe relationships because of our own fear of abandonment or rejection. We train our bodies to not know how to trust ourselves anymore. What will happen is that because you essentially don't trust yourself, you're going to stop taking risks in your life. You will find that your life feels like a cage. It feels small. You might have all of the trappings of success on the outside. You might have a wonderful community around you, but at the same time, you feel empty and you feel like nobody really knows who you are. I had a conversation with someone last year who was in a very prominent career, making a lot of money, but had experienced a narcissistic marriage, was out of that, was dating, having zero luck, was a workaholic, chronically busy, felt completely empty in her life, even though she was achieving and had all these markers of success. And this is what happens when you have a nervous system, a brain and body that has been conditioned to live in fight or flight with a narcissistic person. You leave, you do all the right things, and then it just shows up over here. One of the fundamental beliefs that causes you to repeat this, other than your body and your brain being used to living in hypervigilance and nothing, if you're not living in hypervigilance, things feel weird, and so you want to go back to what is normal, is the belief that you have to prove yourself and that you have to work hard to be recognized or work hard to be lovable. A lot of women who wind up in narcissistic relationships inherently, on a subconscious level, don't believe that they're lovable just as they are. They believe that they have to do, achieve, be perfect, be the best that they can be. Their love for themselves is conditional on what they're doing and what they're achieving. And that psychological template makes you a match for unfulfilling relationships. So if you're chronically busy and you're finding that you're living in a level of isolation that it doesn't make sense, right? You've checked all of the boxes of healing yourself. You've gone to therapy. You know everything that there is to know about a narcissistic person, right? You could recite this and, at a PhD level. You've done all of that. You've built your career. You've made more money. You have what other people would look at you and go, wow, she's built this amazing life after her ex. That's really inspiring. But if you feel empty and you feel stuck in your life, it is 99% likely that you are still operating from a trauma response, living in a state of hypervigilance. Your brain and your body are stuck there. When your brain and your body are stuck there, you often have a hidden belief system that means you have to prove yourself and work harder than other people in order to be recognized, accepted, loved. And when you are living in a state of hypervigilance long after you've left a narcissistic relationship, and you find that you're chronically busy and you're working all of the time, and if you're not working, if you're taking a break, you guilt trip yourself, then what happens is that the centers of your brain that are responsible for self-trust and tuning into your intuition become very weak. You don't trust if you get a signal. You don't trust if you go on dates with people. You are probably staying too long with inconsistent types because that inconsistency matches the emotional state that you are most comfortable operating in. Hypervigilance. Is he going to call me like he said he would? Is he going to ask me out? Wait, am I overanalyzing? Am I reading too much into this? Like, living in a state of hypervigilance, once again, feels normal. The longer you live like that, it's like you're wearing down your inner brake pads and you lose the ability to trust yourself. When you lose the ability to trust yourself and you live like that for a long time and you feel empty and you feel stagnant in your life, health issues start cropping up. Feelings of stuckness get even more pervasive. We are hesitant to take risks. I worked with somebody not too long ago who came across one of these videos on YouTube and immediately felt the intuitive hit. Wow, this is what I need. This is like the type of work that I need. But because she'd had so much trauma from her previous marriage and then so much bad luck in dating since and was feeling so stuck, she didn't trust herself to take the risk and explore working together further. And this is what will happen is that you'll have these inner nudges of, I want to live my life this way. I want to do this with my career. I want to do that with my career. But because you have been so used to not trusting yourself, you're not going to trust yourself to take those nudges seriously, let alone act on them. And what happens is that when you pull back from your own life, it's like your ability to feel joy, your ability to feel happiness gets blunt. It's like stunted, like you stunt your own growth. And you might feel like you're just flatlining. You're doing all of the right things, but you're like emotionally flatlining in your own life. You feel trapped or stuck in your own life. And this doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that you can't change. The feeling of stagnating or the feeling like you're isolated, even though you're doing all the right things, these are signals that you're actually ready for more. It's like your soul, your intuitive, your higher self is calling you to heal on a deeper level. And when you don't go for things, when you pull back in your life, when you keep things safe, there is benefit to this. The benefit means you don't have to risk failure. You don't have to risk rejection. Some people that I work with, they haven't been on a date in years. And the benefit of them not going on a date in so long is because they don't have to deal with the potential pain or the disappointment if it doesn't work out. What happens though is that if you continue living your life avoiding pain and protecting yourself, you cut off the possibility of joy. You cut off the possibility of feeling love. You cut off the possibility of really, really living a life that feels truly aligned for you. So the long-term costs of what life is like after a narcissistic relationship aren't talked about quite often or frequently enough, in my opinion, but they can be even more costly than staying in those types of relationships, especially if we don't make the decision to receive support, to take aligned action, to explore our inner beliefs, to face uncomfortable feelings, to learn how to navigate rejection without shutting down completely. This is the other thing, that if you are avoiding risks in your life that could lead to more happiness, you don't ever develop the muscle to handle challenges in an effective way. A lot of women that I work with, not only are they lost in chronic busyness and feel stuck and isolated in workaholism, and like they're just like running on a hamster wheel, and they don't feel like anybody truly knows them. They don't feel like they know themselves, and they're just like unhappy. It's hard to get out of that. It becomes kind of like what you know how to do. So the first step in learning to break free of this isolation is being willing to be uncomfortable, at least in the beginning, being willing to step by step widen what I call your window of tolerance to new experiences, to vulnerability, to doing less. One of the first things that I do with clients when we start working together is creating space both in the morning and in the evening to do nothing, be with themselves. And this is probably like one of the hardest things for a lot of people because they're so trapped in that state of fight or flight and hypervigilance that it's like an addict. Like you want to go back to worrying, to feeling anxious, to filling your plate with chronic busyness because it feels normal. And your nervous system isn't designed to go out and get what you want. Your nervous system, like for example, if you want a healthy relationship right now, your nervous system isn't designed to help you get a healthy relationship. Your nervous system is designed to keep you safe. And if chronic busyness and trying to control your life and being a workaholic and like turning to your career as a sense of satisfaction or as a sense of like, I'm worthy, but like I'm doing all of this stuff, I'm achieving and I'm burning myself out, like that's not sustainable. So you have to make the decision that you're willing to be uncomfortable and willing to tolerate certain levels of emotional discomfort and learn how to work through your feelings in an efficient way where you're not swallowed by your feelings, you're not swallowed by guilt, or you're not swallowed by regret, but learning how to get through emotional challenges without a lot of emotional suffering in the process. And that's one of the biggest things that we work on, or I work on with clients when we dive into it, is building the skill set of emotional resilience. And this skill set of emotional regulation. And when you learn how to regulate yourself emotionally and replace living in hypervigilance with living from a place of inner peace and a connection to something greater than you. And then instead of protecting yourself, you start taking actions out of your comfort zone that lead you to better career, work-life balance, a healthy relationship, healthier relationships with your kids. I've had people drastically improve the relationship, even with their ex-spouse who has narcissistic traits, whereas before they felt completely trapped, stuck in that. They felt like they were doomed to have to deal with this person for the rest of their life because they had kids together, and were able within a few weeks to transform the way that they show up to that relationship. And surprisingly, shockingly to some people, that relationship becomes a lot easier because they've changed themselves. So the bottom line is that if you want something differently in your life and you've been feeling stuck or stagnant or isolated after your ex, you have to make the decision that you're ready to get a bit uncomfortable and to do things differently. And most importantly, work on the templates, the inner psychology, the beliefs that you're carrying today that are still leading you to chronic busyness, workaholism. You had a dysfunctional relationship with your spouse. Now you have a dysfunctional relationship with your career, with your life, with yourself. The whole common denominator in there is you. And when you work a proven plan that is research backed to rewire your brain and your nervous system from the impacts, the negative impacts of relational trauma, and you start adopting healthier belief systems and healthier behaviors, and then you take action toward the goals that you really want to create in your life, your whole world can change within a matter of months. So I want you to remember that if you've been feeling stuck for some time, and a lot of the people that I work with have been feeling stuck for years. And being stuck comes with its hidden benefits. You don't have to take a risk. You don't have to potentially be disappointed. You don't have to worry if you're going to fail yourself because you're not really trying. There's a lot of benefits to staying small. But at the end of the day, the consequences will ultimately outweigh the benefits of continuing to do life as you've been doing it, feeling isolated or stuck or stagnant. So if this resonated for you, I'm putting together a live virtual workshop. I'm going to announce the date down below in the comments with a link to register, where we're going to be going a little deeper into the first steps of how to break free of this pattern of isolation in your life after leaving a narcissistic ex. So again, I'll leave the link down below this video so that you can register for that. That will be in the month of August. As I'm recording this is August. Then if you would like to learn the 5 shifts that all of my clients learn, and this is kind of like a prerequisite in order to book a discovery session, you can go to bethanydotson.com/masterclass and learn the essential fundamental shifts that you need to make within yourself to stop dating inconsistent partners, to stop ruminating about your ex, to stop feeling stuck in your life after leaving a narcissistic ex, and to learn and really to use the experience of a narcissistic relationship to catapult your life into greater heights while healing the behavior patterns that have caused you to get into those types of relationships to begin with. So bethanydotson.com/masterclass. And then finally, if you would like to explore for a good fit to work together and join my program, Break the Cycle, you can go to bethanydotson.com/talk and book a free breakthrough session. This call is about giving you a breakthrough in your thinking and in your feeling. Everybody comes on that call limited in what they think is possible for them. So we explore the root reasons why you're stuck, the limiting beliefs that are keeping you there. We then look at what you really want, not the watered down version of your life that's safe. The biggest part of that call is getting you emotionally connected and very clear to the kind of life that you really want to have. And then if I feel like we're going to be able to help you get there in an efficient way, then I'll give you the options of working together. So you can go to bethanydotson.com/talk if you would like to schedule a free breakthrough session. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.